Science, the supernatural, biblical prophecy, global events that threaten to rattle the very foundation of human existence. Critical examinations of the most important issues facing today's modern world. Welcome to the Sharpening Report. And now, your host, Josh Peck.
Hello and welcome to the Sharpening Report. I am your host, Josh Peck. You may have noticed that we have a new intro for the show. Now, if you're viewing this on YouTube, you actually got to see the whole video intro, even though this episode is audio only, but I figured I'd put it in there anyway. Now, before we get into the whole story behind the intro and the totally awesome person who helped me put it together, I should first introduce that totally awesome person, as he is tonight's totally awesome guest. Joe Ardis is the CEO of Healthy Pet Guru and an internationally recognized dog behavior expert that specializes in natural approaches to canine training. He's a well-known writer and filmmaker and even musician whose works have been featured on Fox News, WorldNet Daily, The Inspiration Channel, and many other television, news magazine, and press agencies around the globe. He has authored and co-authored a number of titles, including Do Our Pets Go to Heaven, and most recently, Dead Pets Don't Lie, which will be the topic of tonight's show. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Joe Ardis to the show. Joe, how are you doing?
Josh, it's good to be with you. Hey, and by the way, this is the first time I've ever been introduced on a program where I think the word awesome was put in my title, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 times. So thanks for that.
Well, thank you. And it's not nearly enough to capture the sheer awesomeness.
Oh, my goodness. Here we go again.
Absolutely. So yeah, you how have you been? I mean, there's been a lot of things going on behind the scenes that the audience probably is not aware of. What should we even get into first? The intro.
Well, there's so much to cover, but you should probably, before we get too deep in, you should probably explain to your viewers what you meant when you said somehow I was involved in your intro.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So for the audience, not too long ago, maybe it's probably only been a couple of weeks. I was talking to Joe, and it's kind of a funny story. He offered to make an intro for the Sharpening Report, and so I thought, because it's mainly a video show, we do some audio-only episodes, but I thought he meant like make a whole video, this intro. And so I texted him back and was like, oh, thank you so much. That really means a lot. That's actually a huge weight lifted off my shoulders because I've been trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. I've never really been too happy with the intro that we've had up till now. And so he's like, yeah, no problem. And then a couple days later, I get an email that says, here's your intro, and it was an MP3 file. So that's when it...
And it's funny, I couldn't figure out, because in your mind, you're thinking video, and I've done this so many times for people that do, independent radio programs and stuff, and I honestly, it never even occurred to me that you were thinking video, because I've done so many voiceovers over the years, and I'm thinking, I'm going to package up a minute or less voiceover for Josh, and that's all he's going to need for his podcast. And I couldn't figure out why you were so excited. I think you're really excited about a voiceover. Wow, that's really something.
Yeah, and then, when I got the MP3, I was like, oh, now I am in an awkward position, because I can't, you still took the time out of your schedule to do something nice for me, so I wasn't going to be like, write you back. I thought it was going to be a video, you jerk. Like, I wasn't going to do that, obviously, but I was still really appreciative. But but now I'm thinking, oh man, I still gotta. This has got to be a video somehow. So then for the audience, I texted Joe back and I was like, hey, do you have any suggestions maybe on how to make a video around this? I'm a little out of my element. I've done some video editing, but I've never really done anything professionally. And then I went into my whole, Josh Peck rant about how not awesome I am because I do that. And so, but then you suggested video blocks. So I went on there, put some clips together and sent it to you. And
you did a great job. That's the bottom line. The bottom line is you did a great job, and I was really impressed with how you put the video together. Now you got this really cool intro.
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate that, and yeah, so at least for now, this is the new intro. I mean, I'm still learning, and I'm sure there's still going to be more things I can do with it, but for now, I'm kind of thinking of it as like a preliminary intro until we move, and I guess we should probably talk about that.
Yes, yes. Now, see, I think it's really cool to get to be the guy that kind of leaks this onto the sharpening report, but also in the work, big news for Josh Peck fans. Josh Peck, should I tell him, Josh?
Absolutely.
Big. Well, you kind of alluded to this on Facebook, but for those listeners that maybe don't know this, Josh and Christina Peck will be joining the Skywatch TV team probably sometime towards the end of January, which is going to mean fully relocating. You're going to move across the states. And right now, it's probably too early to tell all of the things that you're going to be involved in terms of the media side of it. We're talking about possibilities for new radio programs, perhaps new television programs. But for now, maybe we'll keep a lid on that and just leave it at Josh Peck will be joining forces with the Skywatch TV team, and we cannot wait for you to get here, man.
Woohoo! Yeah, we can't wait to get there too. I mean, this is I didn't think that we would be able to move into full-time ministry so quickly, but I mean, it's been it's been a dream of ours for a while now, and something that we felt God pulling us towards is moving into full-time ministry. So we are just thrilled that that you guys over there invited us out, and yeah, it's looking like sometime in January, and that's when it will. Oh, also I should mention for the Sharpening Report fans, viewers, listeners, this does not mean that I'm going to stop the Sharpening Report. We're still, if anything, it's going to be even more vamped up and more awesome. Because
Josh,
yeah,
you'll have access. You'll have access to more team members. You'll have access to the Skywatch television studio and all of the gadgets and gizmos that are there, as well as you'll have the opportunity to learn a lot of things about media and commercials and how to edit and all kinds of stuff. So for you, it's like having a bunch of new tools at your discretion to further the ministry that you already started with Christina.
Absolutely, and that I'm so excited about that too. So I don't want anybody listening to this to think this means that I'm changing. The Sharpening Report still. Now, what is going to happen is I haven't announced this yet on the show, so I may as well do it now. The 100th episode of the Sharpening Report is coming up, and I'm not going to disclose what we have planned. But it's going to be a good show, so those listening will want to tune in, and it will be aired on New Year's right at midnight. So right the very first second of 2016. Yes, the 100th episode will air, and we're having on a guest or possibly guests that many people have requested over the past year or so. So it's going to be phenomenal, and so make sure to tune into that. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to probably take a couple weeks off so we can get moved and settled in and everything. And then once we get everything set up and figured out how everything's going to play out, we'll start the Sharpening Report with episode 101 in Missouri, and it'll be phenomenal. So I think that's all the background information on me that I'm using your show to do. And you are the guest.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
We covered all your big news. I think that's it, Josh. This was fun.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a joy having you on the show, Joe.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back on.
Seriously though, what you and Christina have been doing, those of us at Skywatch, and by the way, in the introduction that you presented your audience with, it might remove some confusion if suddenly they're hearing me as the dog behavior expert, et cetera, talking about my relationship with Skywatch and what is he saying when he says you're going to join the team at Skywatch. Getting back to the intro, I've done a lot of voiceovers, just to give a little back history as to what we're talking about here. I've done a lot of voiceovers for years and years for the Skywatch. It used to be Raiders News Network. I've been doing the voiceovers for the trailers and stuff like that for years and years. And it's always been just kind of a side ministry that I've made available to Skywatch in particular, because I've always believed in what they're doing in terms of shedding the light on darkness throughout the world now, with the size and scope of Skywatch and the growth of that. But those of us at Skywatch, we've really been watching what you and Christina have been doing, and we've always been very impressed with you vetting biblical facts. In a world where so much conspiracy-type news is being thwarted around as truth, there's a lot of talking heads out there that don't always vet facts in the same way that we've noticed that, like, a good, solid biblical theologian like Gary Stearman does, for example. Well, we kind of put Josh Peck in that crowd. Solid biblical teaching, looks through his information before he opens his mouth. Really, really, really solid, coupled with Christina and all the support she provides to the Sharpening Report. And what better way to further what's going on at Skywatch than to join forces with someone who already carries the vision. We have tools and resources we can pool together and just continue to expand what I think is a critical ministry in these turbulent, outrageous times that we see we're living in, Josh.
Absolutely, and I agree 100%. And that, I've always felt drawn to what you guys do, and what Tom has done and everything, because it is important, and there are so few ministries out there today that's really shedding light on this stuff. And like you mentioned, there are individuals out there who will take the more sensationalist road, and they don't vet things, which is a big pet peeve of mine, because it creates disinformation, and ultimately I believe that's a tool of the enemy to make Christians look dumb.
Exactly.
And
sure.
So that and you guys have always been like top notch at in those regards. So it's an absolute pleasure to be joining you guys and your vision, because it is a vision that we share as well and have for quite a long time. So I am just thrilled at what the future is going to bring. Well, Joe, enough about me. We've taken up more than enough of the show talking about me. I do want to talk about your book. It's it's phenomenal. You've done a couple interviews on it already, and but to begin with, for those who might not be familiar with you or your work, could you give us a rundown of your testimony, how you came to know Jesus, and how that led to what you do today?
Sure. That's a very loaded question. We could do an audio series on that, of course, because it makes up so much of my life. I've been involved in ministry the vast majority of my teenage throughout adult life at various times in various ways. My family and I at one point were in the largest evangelical institution in the U.S., the Assemblies of God, for years and years and years. I grew up under a pastor. So my parents pastors, and did old school, man, like in the 70s, the old school fire and brimstone style, big tent revivals. Remember that?
Yeah.
Anyway, I gave my heart to the Lord when I was probably too early to remember doing it, but the first, I did it again when I was 4. And I still remember the moment it happened. My mom and I were in her bedroom, and I was sitting at the foot of her bed, and I said, "Mom, what does it mean to ask Jesus to come and live in your heart?" And I kept imagining, because this is just, I'm 4 years old. This is just the kind of stuff little kids come up with. But I kept imagining this Jesus character in a robe that I saw in the vinyl graphs at Children's Church. Like, if I invited him into my heart, he's going to walk through the room, and he's going to open up this little door in my chest and like hop in there, and he's going to be living in there, like with a little apartment. I didn't understand how, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I had a little bit of apprehension. I finally could kind of comprehend some of this stuff. And I remember at 4 years old, I said, "Mom, what does that mean to ask Jesus into your heart?" She explained in a way that made enough sense to me at 4 that I understood the redemption, how we are living in a sin flesh suit, and we need Christ to redeem us of our sins, and without him we're forever lost. And I asked him just then and there, "Okay, Lord Jesus, come into my heart." And I remember my mom telling me, "You know what just happened?" And I said, "What's that?" She says, "All of the angels in heaven just started a celebration." And I remember thinking, that's so cool.
Wow.
That the creator of the whole galaxy, but all of these angels are going to devote some moment to celebrate my coming to know Jesus. Anyway, It was a really amazing experience, and I've spent my whole life in the service of ministry, and like I said, in various ways at various times. I've been involved in youth counseling situations. I was a Red Cross LIT in the state of Oregon, which is a lifeguard instructor trainer, where I kind of counseled and also taught lifeguard instructor courses at a youth camp where I would have as many as 20 to 30 young people working for me during the summers. Various musical programs throughout different churches, both in Oregon and Missouri, where I reside now. So there's almost too many scenarios and too many decades to get into all the particulars. But later in life, and the more I became involved in Skywatch TV, I had opportunities, and some of your listeners and viewers might be kind of familiar with this. If they have followed any of the Skywatch television programs, they might be aware of the fact that I've recently come off of this huge project called the Inhuman documentary. Are you familiar with that, Josh?
Absolutely.
Did you get your copy of that, by the way?
No, not yet. I forgot to tell you the apartment number, so we're still trying to find out what happened.
What happened? Okay. Well, in short, the Inhuman documentary, for those that are not familiar with it, is a look into the discussion of transhumanism. Now, I don't know if you've done much radio with your listeners about transhumanism, but it's basically the discussion about what science is proposing we do next to the human race in terms of modifying what it means to be a human being. I'm talking about genetically altering our physiology so that we as human beings become something new that we have no historical model of. And it's a bit of a utopian dream. Some of these people like Natasha Vita-Moore, who I got the chance to meet during my involvement in the Inhuman documentary, and Dr. James Hughes, very intelligent people. They have this kind of a utopic view of what tomorrow's human will look like, in the sense that they believe we can enhance our genetic makeup to be something better than what God has created in what we are now.
Yeah.
Meaning that we're going to have more abilities. We're going to be able to think and reason faster. We're going to be able to do more physically, carry more things, be stronger and more witty. And create a superior human race. And the movie really dives into what some of the ramifications might be when we start tinkering with what God has created in terms of genetic barriers. You know, there's a reason, Josh, for example, why a human being can't naturally procreate with a giraffe and create some new species. You know, God put barriers in between the genetic coding of one species type to the next for reasons that maybe, Josh, just maybe, we humans can't even fathom in terms of the ramifications that it could present when you start tinkering with the genetic makeup of what it is to be a human.
Absolutely.
And so that movie is 3 hours in length. It took over 5 years from the time that we started production to the time that we finished the movie. It was a more than 5-year investigation and filming process. My involvement with that film was as the director of photography. So almost all of the footage that you'll see was me on the road with people like Tom Horn at Skywatch, traveling to gather interviews from some of the brightest minds in the world on both sides of the field, by the way. And of course, your listeners should know that we also included many high-level folks from the Christian community that can talk from a prophetic point of view. For example, Gary Stearman is in the film. Another guy that did a fabulous job presenting some of the biblical ramifications to some of the fallacies that these scientists and transhumanists are indulging in, Chuck Missler.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this movie is really neat in the sense that we didn't want it to be one of those films where we gotcha. As Christians, we didn't want the transhumanists to feel in any way when they got copies of this. Ultimately, they would receive copies of this movie. They would feel betrayed by the fact that they were hospitable enough and warm enough to meet with us and share their worldviews with us, even though we have a contrastly different view of what we believe the future holds for humanity and what it should hold in terms of the Bible. We didn't want to set any of these people up. What I can't imagine a more damaging way to close the doors of discussion to reach some of these people with the gospel than to set them up and do a shock job on them and then splice the film in a way that skews everything they've said. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We wanted a very honest look at the discussion from all of the worldviews. And, of course, at the end of the film, Tom Horn, I believe, does a masterful job. It actually choked me up as a believer. It choked me up. He did a wonderful job towards the end of the film, bringing kind of to conclusion all of the various points of view that were shared from all of these talking heads. And he really lays down the gospel message so that the final thing that a viewer takes away from is this message that Jesus Christ is already offering eternal life. He's already offering what the transhumanists believe they're going to achieve through science. And when he came to the earth the first time, he did it as a man, not an ubermensch, not a superior human altered with genetics through science to become something that God never intended as natural man. He did it as a man.
Yeah.
He suffered as a man. He was beaten and felt pain as a man. That was his experience the first time. And so even though we gathered all of these various interviews from various people around the world and so forth, all around the United States and some parts of the world, like Hugo de Garis in China, we were able to get a Skype with him. He's a part of the film. Ultimately, the color of the movie really tries to create a very persuasive look at the gospel. Does that make sense? We wanted a movie that a secularized college would be willing to play in a biology class and still maintain a fair and balanced view, but they're going to receive the gospel. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, 100%. And that's such a good and important approach to take, because I think a lot of times sometimes as Christians we feel almost a responsibility that we have to bash people